Hello viewers, welcome back to our discussion on photochemistry. Today we will focus attention primarily on the radiative deactivation of excited state. The session is planned as follows, that is, to begin with we will briefly review what we did in the previous sessions. Thereafter we will continue our discussion on the fate of electronically excited molecules, wherein we will focus attention, as I mentioned earlier, on radiative deactivation. Therein we will talk about two phenomenon, very important phenomenon, that of fluorescence and phosphorescence. Having done that, we will briefly touch on two very closely related phenomenon called as chemiluminescence and bioluminescence. And then thereafter we will take one environmental application of this kind of phenomenon, that is in terms of determination of NO, NO2 in air as air pollutants over there. Then towards the end we will sum up what we do today. Let us make a beginning by recalling what we did in the previous sessions. What we have done so far is, that is, to begin with, we defined what is photochemistry and differentiated between the photochemical and thermochemical reactions in terms of variety of parameters. Thereafter, we did take up the explanation of laws of photochemistry and their significance. Having done that, we moved on to the Lambert's-Beer's law and their significance, and also we did touch upon the discussion on the consequences of absorption of radiation. That means, what happens when the radiation is absorbed by atoms and molecules. We saw that the two are very different, because in case of atoms there is only electronic excitation is there, whereas in case of molecules the electronic excitation is accompanied by the vibrational and rotational excitation. Then lastly, we did discuss the processes of activation and deactivation of the molecule with the help of Jablonski diagram. That means, and therein we took up primarily that non-radiative processes, that means there is no emission of radiation. We will continue from there, and today we will, as I mentioned earlier, we will take up the radiative deactivation of excited state of the molecules. Now, let us understand what is radiative deactivation. As the name suggests, we are basically talking about a deactivation which is accompanied by some kind of a emission of radiation. And in this process, there are two phenomena which we have to talk about. One is fluorescence, the other happens to be phosphorescence. These radiative deactivations or relaxation, as they are called, they are typically referred to as a phenomenon called as luminescence. Luminescence is a broader term which it takes care of both that phenomenon we will be talking about. And since this kind of a luminescence is the consequence of excitation of molecule because of radiation, because what we have done is, we have a molecule, we give radiation, the molecule get excited by absorption of radiation. So, it is a photo excitation. This excited molecule is now coming out in the terms of giving out some kind of radiation. So, this giving out radiation is luminescence, and since excitation was because of a photon, so this is called as photoluminescence. So, photoluminescence is a term which covers both this phenomenon, fluorescence and phosphorescence, both of them are in the domain of photoluminescence. Okay. Now, let us take up these two phenomena one by one. First, we will talk about what is fluorescence. You will recall that we have talked about Jablonski diagram earlier. We will be using that diagram very often in today's discussion as well. Now, if you look at fluorescence, what basically happens is, suppose you have molecule in the ground state, we give energy to that, the molecule get excited to from S0 state, it goes to S1 or S2 state over there. Then thereafter we know that it undergoes vibrational relaxation. By that it comes to the ground vibrational state of the excited electronic state. Then thereafter what can happen is, this can give out a radiation to come down to S0 state, and this process is called as fluorescence. And this is a very quick process, it occurs in about 10⁻⁹ seconds, that is 1 nanosecond. Let us see this in terms of the Jablonski diagram. Now, as I mentioned, there are three steps in this. The first step is the excitation part. What happens is, to begin with, we have a molecule in the electronic ground state. From there, with the absorption of radiation, it gets excited to maybe the S1 state, that is singlet state, excited state here, or S2 state, another singlet excited state there. So, this is my first step. Thereafter, the second step is that once it is in say S1 state, say somewhere here, it starts vibrational relaxation, it comes down to the ground state over here, and then once it has reached there, the vibrational ground state of excited state, then the third step comes into picture. That means, from here the molecule can give out a photon and come down to the ground state. So, this phenomenon, this is referred to as fluorescence. That means, where we are emitting a photon. Let me just show you another picture here, that is slightly a blown up version of the same picture. That is, from here, from vibrational ground state of excited singlet state, you are coming down to ground state here. So, this process is the emission process, and since this is giving out a photon, this is a kind of a luminescence. This is called as fluorescence phenomenon. Okay. Now, let us look at certain characteristics of this. Typically, we will observe that the fluorescence emission is at a wavelength higher than the excitation. Why so? We will understand that. Now, if you just seen here, the fluorescence emission is taking place only after the excited molecule has come down to slightly lower level there. That means, suppose you start from here, you give a radiation, you come somewhere here. From there, you relax vibrationally, from here you are coming down. So, when you are coming down, the excitation wavelength energy is so much and emission energy is so much, and emission energy is always less than the excitation energy. That means, the molecule has lost a part of energy in the process of vibrational relaxation. Thereby, the energy of emitted photon is always lower than that of excitation radiation. As a consequence, what happens is that lambda emission happens to be larger than lambda excitation. Let us see it in terms of the diagram. What we see is that typically, say this is for a molecule, this is my excitation spectrum. That means, this is typically the UV visible spectrum kind of a thing for the molecule. That means, normally to look at the fluorescence spectrum, what we do is we take the maximum wavelength there, so that there is a lot of excitation there, lot of activation is there. So, suppose we take this particular wavelength. So, I take the molecule, give this radiation of this particular wavelength, the excitation takes place, the activation takes place. Thereafter, the molecule comes down vibrationally, comes down to ground state, and then thereafter it comes down to the electronic ground state, from that is from S1 to S0, and that comes out in terms of a fluorescence emission. So, this is fluorescence emission. You find that this is at a wavelength larger than or higher than that of the excitation spectrum. So, that is one typical characteristic of our fluorescence emission. Another one is a very interesting phenomenon, what is called as Stokes shift. Stokes shift basically refers to the difference in the wavelength between the absorption and fluorescence maxima. In this picture, we have just seen that this is my absorption maxima, that means excitation maxima, and this is my fluorescence maxima. So, this difference will be referred to as the Stokes shift. This phenomenon of Stokes shift was observed by Sir G. G. Stokes in 1852, and there is an illustration of this kind which probably will make the things clear to you, which has again re-established the fact that fluorescence comes at a wavelength higher or larger than the absorption wavelength or incident wavelength or excitation wavelength. Now, what you see here is that we are having a sample of quinine, which is the fluorescent material here. Now, this is a window with blue glass over there, and then light is coming from outside. Now, this blue glass actually filters off all, it allows radiation only of the wavelength less than 400. That means, all wavelengths above 400 will be cut out by this particular thing. That means, the radiation which are falling on the sample are of wavelength less than 400 nanometers. Thereafter, this molecule undergoes fluorescence, it gives out emission there. This emission is made to pass through a yellow wine glass. Now, this wine glass is going to allow the radiation only of lambda greater than 400 nanometer to pass through, and since Stokes was able to see radiation through this, that means there was shift in the wavelength there. That means, the incident radiation is less than 400, the emitted radiation is more than 400. If it was not more than 400, we would not have been able to see it from here. So, that establishes that the emission wavelength is greater than the absorption wavelength. Okay, that is referred to as Stokes shift. Now, let us move further. One more feature of fluorescence spectrum is that typically a fluorescence spectrum is a band spectrum. Let us see why so. Now, why is it the band spectrum is? Because we see that this is a typical fluorescence spectrum over here for a given molecule. Now, I will just quickly emphasize here that you recall that when the fluorescence takes place, it is coming from this level here, that is the vibrational ground state of excited singlet state here. Now, from this level, when the fluorescence is coming, the photon emission will, there will be wide variety of photon emission will be there, and the molecule will relax from this level to any of these vibrational ground states here. Say from this level to the, from here to this level, or to this level, or to this, or to this. That means a large number of wavelengths will be emitted, or there will be a broad spectrum there. This is referred to as a band spectrum. It is typical of all molecular spectra. So, fluorescence spectrum also is a band spectrum. Okay. Now, let us move on to the second kind of radiative deactivation we have been talking about, that is called as the phenomenon of phosphorescence. Let us see what is phosphorescence and how is it different from fluorescence. Now, essentially we know that in the process of excitation, if we give absorption of radiation to a molecule, molecule get excited, thereafter it undergoes vibrational relaxation, thereafter there is a possibility that the molecule may cross over to the triplet excited state. That means by intersystem crossing, which we discussed in the previous session, that is from an S1 state to it can go to a T1 state, there can be intersystem crossing. Once that happens, then in the T1 state the molecule can vibrationally undergo relaxation there. Having gone through that, that means if it relaxes in the vibrational to the vibrational ground state in T1 state, thereafter this can give out a photon and come down to electronic ground state. This phenomenon is called as phosphorescence. Let us see in terms of Jablonski diagram here. So, what are the phenomenon here? The different steps involved. The first step, as before, is the excitation. That means from S0 state, absorption of radiation is making the molecule go to S1 or S2 state, and then thereafter, say let us assume it has gone to S1 state. Then next step will be that it will undergo vibrational relaxation, it will come down to the vibrational ground state of my S1 state. Thereafter, then there is a possibility that it can undergo intersystem crossing. That means it from S1 state here to this T1 state, this intersystem crossing will take place only when the energy of this level and that of this level happen to be same, then only intersystem crossing comes into play. Now, suppose the system has gone from this level to this, then it undergoes vibrational relaxation further down and comes down to the vibrational ground state of level T1, and then thereafter it can emit photons here. So, this emission of photon, this radiation loss here, radiation emission is referred to as phosphorescence. So, you see that fluorescence was here, that means when the transition was from S1 ground state of S1 to S0, here it is from T1 to S0. So, that is the basic difference here. So, as a consequence of this, there are wide variety of differences in the two phenomenon that we will take up as we just move further. I am sure that you have understood what is fluorescence, what is phosphorescence, and how are the two different there. Now, let us move a little further, maybe this is a slightly better version of the same picture here. So, let us see it slightly more closely. What we see is essentially phosphorescence refers to the emission of radiation from a molecule which is in the vibrational ground state of T1 state to S0 state. So, this is your phosphorescence. Okay. Now, let us move further and see that since in case of phosphorescence, the transition is from a triplet state to a singlet state, and we know that this kind of transition is theoretically not allowed. You will recall that in the previous session we talked about that in any transitions, electron transitions, the spins have to be conserved. That means you can have singlet transitions or triplet transitions, but not singlet triplet or triplet singlet. So, since in this case there is a triplet singlet transition involved, so this is theoretically forbidden. That means it does not take place very often. And secondly, since this transition is from excited triplet state to a ground state, this triplet state has got lifetime which is very long. So, that means this process will require about 10⁻⁴ seconds and may as well go up to about 100 seconds, because it is a very slow phenomenon, whereas the fluorescence takes place in about 10⁻⁹ second, a nanosecond. Now, going further, another difference here is that the energy of triplet state, we know that triplet state which has energy lower than that of the singlet state here. As a consequence, the transitions to the ground state, that is from T1 to S0, will be of lower energy as compared to that in the case of fluorescence. In case of fluorescence, it was from S1 to S0. In case of phosphorescence, it is from T1 to S0, and T1 is of energy less than S1. As a consequence, this will be of lower energy, means the spectrum will be coming at still higher wavelength. Let us see the three of them. For this molecule, so this is the excitation spectrum. The fluorescence is there is somewhere around 200 to 300 nanometers there. Fluorescence is coming in this range, and whereas phosphorescence spectrum comes still farther up there. So, that is the point I want to bring home, that is fluorescence will come at a wavelength greater than the absorption, and phosphorescence will come at a wavelength still higher than that of the fluorescence there. So, that is a mutual relationship between the wavelengths of absorption, fluorescence emission, and phosphorescence emission there. Okay. Now, yet another thing which is again very obvious, that like fluorescence, the phosphorescence spectrum also are band spectra. Same reasons here. So, you see that that emission is taking place from this level here. So, from T1 to various S0 levels there. Since it is coming to various levels, we find that there are wide range of wavelengths are emitted out there. The spectrum happens to be the broad spectrum there. Another characteristic of phosphorescence is that it is very rare at room temperature. Let us see why of it. Why of it is, the first and foremost reason is that, as you mentioned earlier, that the molecule spends lot of time in the triplet state. S0 state or S1 state or S2 states are very short lived. The fluorescence will take place very fast, whereas triplet states are having very long lifetimes. So, molecule stays there for long duration, and since it is staying there for long duration, there is every possibility that the molecule collides with other molecules, with the solvent or other molecules, and give out its energy in a non-radiative process. As a consequence, what happens is the energy is lost by collision to solvent molecules, whereby the molecule does not undergo phosphorescence. That means, this phenomenon happens to be very rare at room temperature. However, if we kind of decrease the temperature, we can reduce the rate of collisions between molecules, whereby we can reduce this loss by collisions, and then probably we can expect phosphorescence spectrum to be observed over there. So, that is the way we typically measure phosphorescence, because phosphorescence is relatively rare phenomenon, lesser observed as compared to fluorescence, because fluorescence is very often we come across molecules which are fluorescent in nature. Now, let us take up two more phenomenon which are very closely related to what we have been discussing so far, that is, but what we are discussing so far were photoluminescence. That means, we are talking about a luminescence, that is fluorescence and phosphorescence, as I mentioned earlier, are called as luminescence. And since the two phenomenon were there, the excitation in both the cases are because of absorption of radiation or the light, they are called as photoluminescence. Now, I am moving on to two phenomenon which are closely related in terms of emission of radiation, but in terms of the source of activation, they are different there. So, the two phenomena I am referring to are chemiluminescence and bioluminescence. Let us see what is chemiluminescence. Chemiluminescence basically refers to emission of radiation during a chemical reaction. That means, here the excitation or the activation is coming, the energy for the activation is coming from the energy of the chemical reaction there. Typical examples are say oxidation of luminol in an alkaline solution. Luminol is this molecule, it undergoes under alkaline conditions, it undergoes oxidation here, it gives me aminothalate ion, and what we get this aminothalate ion in the first step is in the excited state here. That means, this is an activated molecule, and this activated molecule relaxes down, comes to ground state with the emission of a photon here. So, this particular phenomenon, since it is also accompanied by emission of a photon, so this is a kind of a luminescence we see in this case. Okay, it is giving out radiation, but here the excitation or the activation was not because of photo. So, it is not photoluminescence, this is called as chemiluminescence, because the energy of activation is coming from a chemical reaction. Let us see a small picture here, because this shows the luminol reaction. So, we can see that how beautifully this is giving out radiation from there. Now, let us take up the phenomenon of bioluminescence. As the name suggests, bioluminescence. So, it refers to the phenomenon of luminescence occurring in living systems or the compounds extracted from living systems. So, the basic premise here is that we have been talking about photoluminescence. Photons were responsible, or the light was responsible for activation or excitation. In case of chemiluminescence, we had chemical reaction as a source of energy for excitation. Now, in case of bioluminescence, we have got biological reactions involved in that. That means, so not essentially biological reaction, probably we can the better word will be biochemical reactions are behind this kind of phenomenon to be observed. And there are very beautiful examples of this kind. We have everybody is familiar with the firefly, and we know some fishes which give out radiation or light from there, or certain worms are there which give this radiation. There are some examples I am showing you here. So, this is a fish which is glowing, this is firefly, another some worm which is giving out radiation there. So, all the source of radiation in these cases are termed as this process is basically, or the phenomenon is referred to as bioluminescence. Let us see that in case of firefly, the light emission basically is because of the enzymatic oxidation of a compound called as luciferin. And herein the enzyme what is called as luciferase is involved in the process. So, the reactions are as follows, that is, in the first step this molecule of luciferin undergoes oxidation, and the product what we get as an oxidation product here, it is in the excited state. So, we get oxyluciferin which is in the excited state, it is a high energy unstable molecule, and this reaction is done in presence of the enzyme called as luciferase. So, that is the enzyme specific to this particular reaction there. Thereafter, in the second step, this oxyluciferin which is in the excited state undergoes deactivation, comes down to ground state and emits out a photon there, and that is the photon what you observe as a light coming out of the insect there. So, that is what is basically bioluminescence. So, in this case we have got biological reactions or biochemical reactions behind the phenomenon to be observed. Okay. Now, let us take up some very important kind of an example here. Let us see how do we use this kind of phenomenon. Let us take the example of determination of gaseous pollutants. We know that this nitrogen oxides are cause of pollution, the air pollution there. How do we determine them? We can use the phenomenon of chemiluminescence for the purpose, and what do we do is basically our objective is to find out the amount of NO and NO2 in a gaseous system, which is basically maybe a sample of air which contains these two pollutants there. So, what do we do is, to begin with, first we will try to determine the amount of NO, that is NO is determined as follows, that is, to determine the amount of NO, this gas is made to pass through a reactor in which it reacts with ozone to give you NO2 star. Let us see the reaction here. So, this NO reacts with ozone and this gives you a molecule of NO2 in the excited state. That is the first step there, and then thereafter this molecule of NO2, this activated molecule of NO2 undergoes kind of photo emission, since it is coming as a chemical reaction, it is called as undergoes chemiluminescence in the visible range to IR range there, that is a range where it is observed, and chemically speaking that is what is happening here. That means, the NO2 in the excited state comes down to ground state with the emission of a photon there, and now this photon, each molecule of NO2 star is going to give me NO2 and one photon there. So, what we do is we measure the number of photons which are getting emitted over there. So, for each photon observed, it corresponds to one molecule of NO, because one molecule of NO in the first reaction gave us one molecule of NO2 star. So, one NO2 star is equivalent to one molecule of NO. So, this gives you the amount of NO present over there. So, to determination of NO is very straightforward. That means, you take that, put into the reactor, it reacts with ozone, gives you NO2 star, and in the second step NO2 star gives out a photon, measure the number of photons, that number of photons gives you the number of molecules of NO present in the sample you have taken there. The number of photons which are getting emitted, that is measured with the help of a device called as photomultiplier tube. This method is so sensitive that we can even measure concentrations as small as about 1 ppb. That means 1 parts per billion also can be measured in the sample of a polluted air. Let us see how do we determine NO2 in the sample of polluted air. NO2 we know cannot be determined as such. So, what do we do is, to determine NO2, what we do is we ensure that the sample of air which we want to measure does not have any NO in that. So, we ensure that first. Thereafter, this air sample containing NO2 is made to pass through a catalytic converter. In the catalytic converter, does a job of converting this NO2 to NO. Then thereafter, this NO now, this sample of air which now has only NO, no NO2, that is made to pass through another reactor wherein it reacts with ozone as before, and then this NO reacts with ozone, gives you NO2 in the excited state, and then that NO2 will undergo deactivation with the emission of photon, and that number of photons we again measure. And as a consequence, but the number of photons now will give you the number of molecules of NO, which at turn are equal to number of molecules of NO2. So, this way we can determine the amount of NO2 in a given sample of polluted air. So, first we determine for NO, then for NO2 by passing through a catalytic converter. So, that way we can use this process or this phenomenon of chemiluminescence to determine a very important determination of pollutants in air. Now, let us sum up what we have done today. What we have done today is, that is, we briefly reviewed the contents of previous sessions, wherein we talked about what all has been covered so far. Thereafter, we explained the radiative phenomenon associated with the deactivation of electronically excited molecules. That means, the molecules which have been excited electronically, when they undergo deactivation accompanied by radiation loss. So, the two phenomena we discussed were fluorescence and phosphorescence. Thereafter, we having talked about the phenomenon of fluorescence and phosphorescence, we took up the characteristics of fluorescence and phosphorescence. After that, we explained the chemistry behind closely related phenomenon of chemiluminescence and bioluminescence with help of some examples there. And lastly, we have explained the principle of determination of NO and NO2 in a sample of air, which is basically they are kind of pollutants in air which are to be determined, and we use chemiluminescence for this particular purpose there. In the next session, we will talk about a few more concepts like fluorescence quenching, what does it mean, what are the phenomenon behind it, what are the factors which cause fluorescence quenching, and thereafter we will talk about something called as quantum yield and things like that. Thank you.